We are going to consider what is actually a very simple concept, really, and that is that of contract verbs. In our textbook, we have three types of contract verbs primarily explained. And in this video, we're just going to talk about what we call epsilon omega verbs. The omega is, of course, the first person singular ending, I, of the present active tense, or simply the present tense as we know. And the epsilon is a characteristic of some verbs whose stem ends in this vowel. And that poses a little bit of difficulty for us, not much, but a little bit of difficulty because that vowel, epsilon in this case, will interact with the vowels in the endings of verbs. It's best if you do what the author of our textbook suggests. If you're using the 6th edition in beginning of chapter 5, you'll notice that he first gives you some contract rules, combinations, and when we get to chapter 8 and talk about alpha omega verbs, which are also a form of contract verbs, verbs whose stem ends in alpha, and then the ending is added. And towards the end of the textbook, he also goes a little bit into omicron omega verbs, stems that end in omicron, and then the ending is added to it. What happens when two vowels come together very often is I like to make a comparison. They get married. They don't just stay the same, they come together in some way. And usually, as it is in a marriage, two personalities, and I won't say which is which, but two personalities, one will often be stronger, a stronger personality, a more defined and definite and sometimes even dominating personality, and the other more quiet or accommodating personality. And so it is a little bit with these vowels. We don't have such a problem with, I want to share my screen. What do I want to share? I want to share contract verbs. Here we are. We don't have so much a problem with epsilon omega verbs. As you notice, this group has only two places where we really notice a difference when we add the endings. Let's take the verb laleo, which means I speak or I utter, or it can mean even babble, or sometimes even whisper or chatter. In earlier times, there was a difference between laleo and lego, I speak. Both of them, laleo would be more the verb for the sound of the speech rather than emphasizing what was being communicated, whereas lego, which we have already met, and from which logos, the word is derived, would convey more the meaning of the speech. The distinction between these two verbs is probably being lost by the time the New Testament is being written, though one needs to keep in mind each author and each context, as there may still be some leftovers of the older classical distinction left in the New Testament. But we will talk about the exegetical issues more later. What we need to realize now is that laleo is the form you will see in the dictionary if you look up the word. The reason that it keeps the epsilon in the stem is so you can see how it will interact with different endings. But in the Bible itself, in the New Testament, you will never see laleo, you will only see lalo. In this marriage of epsilon and omega, omega is the stronger of the two vowels and simply takes over. The only thing that's left of epsilon is the circumflex accent, which shows that there has been a contraction that's taken place. It's good, in fact, important really, if you add the circumflex accent when you write with contract verbs. But because we aren't learning the rules of accents, it won't be counted wrong if you leave it off, but it is helpful if you do have it. And you'll notice when we add the ending for you singular, you speak or you utter, la le es becomes la les, and notice that again, epsilon and epsilon have here gotten married too. The marriage is shown by the circumflex accent, that there's a contraction that is taking place. The same is true in a third person singular. All that's left of the epsilon at the end of the stem of laleo is that it's contracted to become lale with a circumflex accent. There are only two places that are really crucial for us to remember, and that is that we won't have lawmen. Instead, epsilon contracts with omicron, and actually both of them change into umen. And the same is true of the second person plural. The two come together as actually they do above to make lalete. And again, you see the contraction noted by the circumflex accent. But this is the only two places where with epsilon omega verbs, the spelling changes. Instead of lawmen, we have lumen. Instead of lalete, we have lalete. Again, usin, what happens is that it contracts to, the contraction is shown by the circumflex accent. The rest you can read in chapter 5. It's really rather simple to follow. I'd like to, though, finish by giving you a quote from a very short part of a verse in John 1:38, where Jesus says, actually, I'll have to come out of this because for some reason this has been changed. I'm not sure why, but rather than do the whole video over, in John 1:38, Jesus asked the question of two men who end up being his disciples. T ze tete. And we'll put the circumflex accent here where it belongs over iota. This is the verb zeteo. This is the form, we'll find it in the lexicon, in the dictionary. But notice, again, it does not look that way when we have it in the New Testament. Jesus asked them, actually, what are you seeking? T means what? You might have expected him to ask, whom are you seeking? Because they're obviously seeking Jesus. But the question is interesting. It's broader than that. It's bigger than that. What are you looking for? Which might be a theme that we would want to take up in our preaching, for example. And on speaking on this verse, what are you looking for? And of course, the answer is a person. And the need is to come into a relationship with him, which is what these two men are looking for, really. But notice that Jesus doesn't ask him, not just ask whom, but what? What is it that you want? What do you need? And Jesus will often draw it out of us, whether that's in prayer or in speaking with others. What is it that we really want? What is on our hearts? Zeteo is one of these important verbs that we need to know, to seek, to look for, to search for, and the rest of the ones in the vocabulary in chapter 5 are also important. You need to learn them.